So I just got back from seeing Spider-Man Homecoming, and Sony partnering with Marvel was the best thing they could do for Spider-Man. Like, I super really appreciate it, and it just makes me a bit, not angry, but a bit apprehensive with this whole idea of taking him out of the MCU and then Sony doing their own thing, and then them hoping that people will associate Spider-Man with the MCU. So the fact that he's not in there anymore means that they can still make money and it's kind of running alongside the MCU. I really think that's going to be a bad idea. This partnership created something great, and Spider-Man Homecoming is a really super enjoyable movie because Spider-Man's an underdog. That's the whole thing, but they've made him an underdog in kind of like a modern context, and also as part of the superhero community as well. Like, just the story's really good. Like, for me, it was as fun as seeing the Sam Raimi one, because I remember being like 17 years old and seeing that movie, and this for me was kind of like that. It was a lot like the Amazing Spider-Man movies. It's tried to be way too edgy and like dark, and that totally just didn't work for me at all at any point. So I found those movies kind of mediocre, even though there's great people involved in those movies, and you know, I liked kind of a lot of what happened in those films. It just wasn't up to scratch for me. It didn't feel like Spider-Man. Literally, the term friendly neighborhood Spider-Man is the best way of describing this film, because he is your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Like, it's just like, obviously there's gonna be there's gonna be spoilers in this, okay? So if you haven't seen the movie, I'd go away from this now and then return once you have. But just the fact that it kind of starts off with kind of this young kid, well, Peter Parker, vlogging. He vlogs, and all those vlogs that you've seen in the ads, there's a whole sequence of that in the movie, which is really cool. And then yeah, just the film kicks off, man, and then the film technically begins after the Battle of New York with Vulture and his kind of cleanup crew having a contract with the city to clean up all the mess and that, and like the Leviathans and Chitauri stuff left behind. But you specifically see a Leviathan at one point, and you can see loads of other Chitauri things as well. And yeah, now I totally get why the Damage Control idea as a TV show was cancelled, because Damage Control actually appear in this movie. They're not like a major part of it, but they are a catalyst to things happening, which as soon as I saw it, I was like, gosh, this totally makes sense as to why they're not doing that show anymore, man. And also another thing is that the first scene takes place, like I said, Battle of New York, and then it says 8 years later. Now, I always assumed the Battle of New York took place in 2012, which is when the Avengers is set. I'm beginning to think it may take place in like 2009, because 8 years later, if 2017 is supposed to be the year in which, oh no, this is so confusing right now, because it said 8 years later, and it's only been like 5 years since the Avengers came out. So I'm kind of at odds. I'm kind of trying to think, okay, what year did it take place? What if Spider-Man Homecoming and Civil War kind of took place in like 2020? You know what I mean? Because I always assumed the films were in real time, but there is time between the movies, but you don't know as to how close like they are in real time. So for example, what if the entirety of Phase 1 took place within like 2 years, and then there was a gap, and then the entirety of Phase 2 took place loads of years later? You know what I mean? It's kind of making me reassess it all, because that kind of threw me off. But anyway, I'm getting off track here. There's a fair amount of Tony Stark. He's not in it too much. It focuses on Peter Parker a lot. There was a Miles Morales reference, because we get to meet his uncle, Aaron Davis. And yeah, he mentions his nephew, so that got me like going, oh. And also, there's a wicked bit at the beginning where you hear the Marvel fanfare, but you don't get the Marvel fanfare. It's Spider-Man fanfare, and it's the Spider-Man theme, da 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 da, but orchestral, and it is wicked. It was great, because that really got me going, because I was not expecting that at all, not one bit. But yeah, oh God, there's just so much. It's packed. It's packed. It's like a chocolate selection box, like full of stuff. Like there's a good villain. Obviously, you got Peter Parker and his whole kind of like high school thing. Man, I'm just so glad that they zeroed in on, you know, the difficulties of him being a teenager and wanting to do teenage stuff and having to do other things and trying to kind of like mix it all together, and his best friend Ned finding out about who he really was and the comedy with that, and him trying to live up to the ideal of being a superhero. That is just so good, and I'll gladly see the film again now. You know what I mean? And it's just gone 9 at night here, and I'd gladly like literally just hop into a next screening and see it again. It was that good. There's loads of MCU references in there. Obviously, we see Captain America more than once actually. We've got the return of Pepper Potts. Zendaya, her character Michelle. It turns out that she's not Mary Jane. She can't be Mary Jane but her friends do call her MJ. She says near the end of the movie. So, and also, you know, we get told that like Avengers Tower was sold, and they like redid kind of the upstate New York facility and kind of turned that into kind of the main Avengers kind of base of operations. And so much. It's like this movie actually, it's kind of pointed to like where the MCU is going. Man, so I'm hoping Thor Ragnarok will be kind of like as crazy, and you'll be seeing things where you're going like, what the hell? But yeah, it's made me kind of have to reassess the timeline, try and figure out as to when things are going on. But yeah, it's pretty much the story is pretty like, see, when they tried to do Sinister Six in the Amazing Spider-Man movies, obviously they threw in a few references here and there and we're going to build up to it. Whereas, although we don't get the Sinister Six in this movie, it does kind of establish kind of a few villains in a scenario that makes you go, oh, okay, I get that. That's a good way of kind of like having all these guys together so they can do villain stuff. And I kind of wish we had seen a few more villains. I think we see Scorpion. The Scorpion at some point, but not in Scorpion suit. I'm pretty sure of it, because he had a scorpion tattoo on his neck, so obviously, come on now. What else? So much, like it's jam-packed. Like Tom Holland, great, brilliant. Like as soon as I saw him in Civil War, I was like, this kid is awesome. He makes a great Peter Parker, and he makes a great Spider-Man as well. It's just the tone of the movie is great. I think the whole kind of like teen thing, like being influenced by like John Williams, like films from the 80s. John Williams? That's not his name. John Hughes? Yeah, John Hughes. John Hughes movies from like the 80s, and like Ferris Bueller's Day Off and all that kind of stuff. I think that was a great way to go with it. Like I said, the comedy is on point like pretty much the whole time, all the way through. And the spectacle is really good. It's kind of different because when you compare the Raimi movies, they had to kind of like do these. The action is big, but it never feels kind of like, you know how you have like the electro scene in like Times Square in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and people were like watching and cheering and stuff like that. It never felt like that. It felt like, oh God, something's happening. I have to use my powers. But it was never like super big thing going on where Spider-Man had to save the day. It was kind of like these smaller incidents, but they were difficult for him because he'd never dealt with this situation before, so it was really difficult. Oh man, the story just went places I didn't expect, and I'm literally been rambling off for about 10 minutes and it doesn't feel like it all. Literally, it feels like I've been talking about it for like 10 seconds, but you should definitely, if you're watching this and you've not seen the movie, don't go and see the movie. Like literally, it makes no sense. Another cool bit though was the Iron Spider costume, or the MCU version of it, which just seeing it just made me go, no way, no. Like when you see it, you can tell it's definitely what it's based on, the Iron Spider costume, when you see it in the point of the movie. God, it's just jam-packed. Like, the movie's like 2 hours and a bit long, and there's just like, like I keep saying, there's just so much in the movie. And Sony, obviously I know no one at Sony's gonna see this, but stay partnered with Marvel. Please don't do the Silver Sable Black Cat spin-off. You know, just please don't do that. I'd rather you not do Venom. Just stay partnered with Marvel. This is the best thing for you. Like, please, just please. If you love Spider-Man and you know, you're familiar with like the world of Spider-Man, you'll get all the references and whatnot to all the different characters who pop up here and there. And oh man, it's so good. And also, like, I literally, man, it makes me more annoyed because I've mentioned Miles, and by the sounds of things, we might not get to see him at all, ever. But I just hope they stay partnered, and at some point in the future, like within the next 10 years, I'd love to see Miles Morales on the big screen. I'd absolutely love that. I'd love to see Peter Parker pass the torch to Miles, but I've been rambling for about 11 minutes, so I'm gonna stop here. Otherwise, I think I'll probably just repeat myself. But yeah, when you're watching a movie, keep a lookout for all them MCU references, because there's loads. Even look at Peter's principal. Now, you may recognize him. Later on in the movie, you should notice a photo which will explain as to why you recognize him. It's actually quite smart. But anyway, man, like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, I'll check you on the next one.